I read every post-crisis appearance of Impulse's breakout star, Arrowette, and watched every episode of Season 1 of Dance Mom. Here's where these two relate.
I was in by the 1 hour. My mother's love is choking.
Arrowette is a legacy role, first created in 1961 for the character of Bonnie King, who is actually pretty relevant here, surprisingly for a character from the 60s, who was like a one-off. But our main character here is the second character to take up the role, Bonnie's daughter, Sissy King Jones. Sissy first appeared in Impulse number 28, but primarily featured in Young Justice. She's a powerless superhero who uses a bow and arrow as her primary weapon and theming. However, she eventually retires from the superhero life following Young Justice number 17. Dance Moms is a reality TV show that primarily aired on Lifetime, starting in 2011 that continued for 8 seasons, ending in 2019. The show covered the Abby Lee Dance Company's training and performances under Abby Lee Miller, focusing on the drama between the young girls, their mothers, and Abby Miller. There were a lot of other shows that spawned from this dance group, but I'm only covering the original. It's a trashy reality TV dance show. That's all I really need to know. And I don't have anything against this kind of dance as a concept. As a kid, I did do dance for a few years, but I also didn't compete because I wasn't very good, to be honest. But I knew some girls that did, and they were really good. I also do archery, a little bit. Once again, not great at it, only picked it up pretty recently, but I do really enjoy this sport. But my stuff doesn't really matter, don't worry about it. If you do care about my stuff, then click the subscribe button and drop a like under the video. The surface similarities are more easy to point out. Bonnie is a classic dance mom. Because her Olympic and superhero dreams never worked out, at the first glimpse of talent from her daughter, she pushes her to become what she never could so that she could live vicariously through her. In Dance Moms, in the very first episode, Maddie's mom says both winning is everything and that it's about the girls becoming stars. This level of perfectionism is displayed identically in Bonnie King. In Sissy's debut issue, Impulse number 28, every move Sissy makes is graded by her mom and scored. She's pressured to win even though there is no competition, only somebody trying to kill her. Bonnie makes up her own competition for Sissy, pitting her against Impulse, as someone who Sissy has to be better at fighting crime than. In Young Justice number 7, Bonnie gets into an argument with Wonder Girl's mother over the fact she's more concerned with marketing her daughter and merchandise of her daughter than she is with Sissy's safety. This is similar to how, also in episode 1, Abby Lee Miller insists on Maddie sucking it up and continuing to practice despite feeling nauseous and crying. In the same issue of Young Justice, Bonnie compares Sissy's popularity to that of her teammates, in the same way that over and over again, the dance moms compare their daughters to one another across the series, presumably. There's also another safety issue that is almost exactly the same on both panel and look at the costumes that these girls are wearing. And look at the costumes that Sissy wears in her debut. You really could imagine Sissy alongside these girls. Different sport, same outfits. Crop tops that draw attention to the chest, and tutus. As a dance costume, it makes sense. But on a child, on a girl that's not even in her teens, it's ludicrous. And this is on national television, where anyone can see it, no matter the intention. In episode 2, the girls' dance routines and costumes are explicitly designed to be sexual. And this is normalized to the parents, despite it obviously being an uncomfortable position for the girls to be in, especially when they don't even realize how skimpy these costumes can be. But at least these mothers acknowledge that this is a problem. Bonnie King, meanwhile, is the one who designed the original showgirl-style Arrowette costume. On Sissy, this costume is even worse. She may be older, around 15, based off of the ages of the other heroes that make up her friend group, but she's also a superhero, with absolutely no body armor on and so much skin showing. By putting her in the costume, not only is Bonnie putting Sissy at risk to creeps looking at her weird, she's also putting her at risk to actual physical danger that she put her in, and then only made that worse by her costume decisions. People talk a lot of shit about Robin, but by the time that Sissy's running around as Arrowette, Robin is covered head to toe and presumably has armor on. A lot of these moms talk about how they danced as kids too, and that now because of that they make their daughters dance as well. This is a lot like how in Bonnie's past, her mother had made her shoot, had taught her to be an archer, and had been hard on her the same way Bonnie is with Sissy. She'd been in the position her daughter was in, but she didn't quite learn what Sissy did. And not only did Bonnie make Sissy live out the same childhood as her, she made it worse. Not only did she turn into a mix of soccer mom and dance mom, she also consistently put her into physical danger. Even ignoring the emotional trauma that Sissy dealt with because of her mother, there's also the way that she puts her in harm's way. After her debut, Sissy gets actually taken away from her mother because of the way she's forcing her to be a crime-fighting teenager. And for a while, Sissy being Arrowette is her own choice, one she makes for herself against the wishes of most of the adults around her. But that doesn't last forever, and very quickly, Bonnie's influence on her heroism comes back, even when she's not there. She still hears her mother's voice in her head when she's alone in the field. On the worst day of her life, she's still thinking about her mother. In her internal monologue, she notes that her mother was quote-unquote right about needing another costume. Sissy's life is falling apart, and her mother is still part of it despite being miles away. In episode 3, Brooke, who is 13 and the oldest of the girls, wants to leave dancing and is starting to lose the spark of performing because of how long she's been doing it and how burnt out she's been from dealing with Abby Lee Miller for so long, and seeing that all of her friends are doing other things and a lack of socialization that comes from being at the dance studio at every waking moment outside of school. This continues to be a theme with Brooke for the rest of the season, and even though she doesn't want to be there, she still has to push through an injury caused by dancing. This happens in both episode 3 and episode 9, and both times she still has to dance. In episode 9 specifically, Brooke's arm pops out of its socket during her solo in front of the judges, and she continues dancing until the end of the solo and still walks off stage with a smile on her face. I would say this is a lot like how Sissy acts. At the beginning of her time as Arrowette, she's all smiles and yes, mommies, but then by the time she's working with her team on Young Justice, she's a lot more jaded about what she's doing. And in her introduction to the Young Justice books, Sissy is injured, and even through this, she still fights against harm with the team. And while this isn't something that Bonnie makes her do, since she's on her own, it is something that kind of enforces the way that Sissy was raised to ignore her own pain and keep fighting despite it. Watching episode 5, when a Broadway casting director shows up to see the girls in order to potentially cast for Annie, in terms of Arrowette, this felt reminiscent of when Sissy guest stars on the DC Universe version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was the 90s, I guess. Once again, it's another stage for Bonnie to parade her daughter around on, and she is pushing her just as hard as usual because of it. Even in this new role and new opportunity, it still ends up coming back to archery and Arrowette. Granted, this isn't because of Bonnie, and it's rather because of werewolves, but still, she had to be Arrowette again because of this. Throughout the entire season, all of the dance moms argue with Abby Lee Miller at one point or another, and this definitely isn't different from Bonnie. More than once, Bonnie has argued with Sissy's other mentor, Red Tornado, who looks after Young Justice. I brought up Young Justice number 7 a lot, but it really is a good show of just how dance mom-like Bonnie is. The only real difference here is that Reddy actually cares about Sissy's well-being and safety, and Bonnie just wants her daughter to be famous and the best and better than the other heroes she works with. Ultimately, Sissy does quit being Arrowette. Surprisingly, it really is more because of the failing of American society as opposed to the actions of Bonnie King. And honestly, that's a topic for another day that I could definitely cover if you guys want me to. It doesn't stop Bonnie from taking her daughter to a different stage after her original dream of her daughter being the best in Team Vigilantism doesn't work out. Instead, she seeks out the Olympics. In Dance Mom's terms, I'd see this as close comparison to the Nationals that the first show builds up to over the course of the first season. When Sissy goes to the Olympics, one of the first things we see of Bonnie in issue number 23 is her complaining that they're not getting special treatment because of Sissy's position on the Olympic team and not getting to fly in first class. This lines up pretty well with the consistent conflict of some of the girls' moms being unhappy with the uneven treatment that Abby gives their daughters, even though they're still the best of the best and paying all of this money to be there. And even though Bonnie is the one who put her daughter in this position, there's still no denying that she is willing to fight someone for what she thinks is right for her daughter. It's just that what she thinks is right for her daughter isn't always what's right for her. She wants Sissy to get her chance to be in the spotlight. This is just like almost all of the moms on the show, wanting their daughters to get their chance and standing up to Abby when she isn't treating them all equally or giving them their time to shine. Bonnie puts it really well here. I'd threaten Satan if I thought he was going to harm Sissy. Now, obviously this doesn't mean she wouldn't put Sissy in harm's way, but she has a whack sense of what's dangerous to her daughter. It does mean, however, that she would threaten a supervillain if she thought that he would threaten her chances at winning gold. And this felt a lot like how in episode 12, which is after the Nationals, Melissa, who is Maddie's mom, tries to smooth up a producer in order to try and get him to prioritize picking Maddie over the other girls. And in this Olympics arc, once again, Bonnie reinforces the fact that this was something she had to do as a kid, and now it's what she's making her daughter do too. It's cyclical. It's a legacy to her more than it is what her daughter wants. And in the end, the Abby Lee Dance Company wins first place and Sissy King Jones wins gold. And the similarities just keep piling up. If you made it to this point, subscribe and like the video, but until next time, listeners.